So I saw another video guided on YouTube recently. It kind of inspired me to make this, but he was saying that him and his family had he had like a pretty high paying job, like over 100K a year, something like that, in the US. Quit it, used like all his 401K savings, and probably his wife had her own money in savings too, and her own job before possibly. He had kids, I think. They moved to Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo, where I am. And they started up two businesses. One was a restaurant. I forget what the other one was. But he was saying the restaurant was taking up so much of their time that they quit the other business to focus on the restaurant. And they ended up losing all their money. And they ended up going back to the U.S. and then just living off of like credit for a while. And the ending of the story is good. They're back in the Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo now. They moved back. And I think they're very financially successful, and I'm pretty sure they have ways of making income that aren't like normal jobs. I'll try to leave a link for his channel if I can find it again. I might not be able to find it though. But what I want to talk about was that it made me think about that restaurants, you can Google it. Google like business type failure rate. Most sites will show restaurants up as the number one on the list. Restaurants are the most likely business to fail, one of the most least successful businesses, and they have a very, very low, what is it called, a profit margin. Profit margin is what it's called. So what it means is if a restaurant, a lot of them are saying restaurants have a profit margin of like 5%. It was like normal. Another site I saw said like 10% was normal, 20% was very good, 5% is low. I don't know, let's say it's 10%. So what it means is if the profit margin is 10%, it means that if somebody spends $100 on your restaurant, you're the owner of the restaurant, $100 goes into your pocket, it's yours. But what it means is that 10% profit margin is only 10% of that is actually profit. The other $90 is going to pay for expenses like your employees, taxes, the food, ingredients that you have to pay for, the rent or the lease on the property you're paying for, property taxes, whatever, all your expenses. So 10% or 5% is like extremely, extremely low. And that also makes the business very, very risky, very easy to fail. Like if your profit margins are 5%, if you have to spend 95, so like if you have to spend $95,000 on expenses just in order to make $5,000, or if it's a 10% profit margin to make $10,000, that is insane. And like him, I think there are a lot of people going into business and starting up these restaurants that know nothing about business. And they're either going into it with a ton of debt, or like him, they're like wasting all their savings on it, or risking all their savings. I don't know, I didn't listen to it much, but he could have used debt possibly on top of his 401k savings, all the savings he had as well. And kudos to him. It's super, super brave and crazy to do that. But I want people to know, like, if you are thinking of starting a business, please don't open up a fucking restaurant. Like, just don't do it. One of the sites I said the failure rate was like 60% estimated out of like after 10 years. And that is crazy to go into a business where, say, the profit margin is like super thin, like 5, 10%, 20%, or whatever. And then on top of that, there's a high failure rate. So you're either like risking your credit, taking out a lot of loans. You could be risking all your savings or your income if you have a job that you're using to finance this. And you're risking all of that to go into a business that is more than likely than not to fail. Like if there are 60% is really bad. Like if 10 people open up a restaurant, 6 of them are going to fail. So that means if you open up a restaurant, you are more likely to fail than to succeed. And especially if you have no previous like real business experience, you're probably even more likely to fail. And it seems like restaurants are very common sort of dream business that people have. At least I could be wrong, but it seems like it to me. Like I remember I had a friend, and her dream business was to like have her own restaurant, and she was actually more entrepreneurial minded as well. And I know my old roommate, like they would talk about like he kind of wanted to open up like his own food truck type of thing, which is basically just a mini restaurant. And I don't know, it seems like, and I remember my mom, an old stepdad I had, he had owned a restaurant before. And on top of all the risk and everything like that I already talked about, I think it takes a lot of effort to run. And if you're trying to do it more passively, like if you're trying to hire everyone, not do any of the work yourself, your profit margin is going to be even lower. There's going to be more stress, but I assume even with that, there's probably still a ton of work to do. Like from everything I've heard about owning restaurants, people say it's like very, very busy. Like it just takes up a ton of their time. So it just seems like one of the worst possible businesses that you could start, in my opinion. Another interesting thing about restaurants is there's really no like brand loyalty. Like there's not much of an incentive, like after someone has been to your restaurant once, maybe to keep coming to that restaurant over and over again. Like there sort of is, like maybe they like the food and go back to it. But the thing is, like a lot of people with restaurants, they like to try out different restaurants all the time and maybe not go to the same one. And it's kind of, I don't know, maybe there's a bit of brand loyalty, but it seems like something that could get lost within the restaurant industry. Another thing we've seen is like, if something like COVID, when COVID happened, restaurant was probably a very bad industry to be in, at least when everything was shut down. I just want people to know, like, if you're thinking about starting up your own business, I beg you not to start up a restaurant, especially if you don't have a lot of experience already. Like maybe if you have a lot of experience in like real estate and in a sort of similar industry already, it would kind of make sense. Like you already have a food truck or you run a catering business already, and maybe you have experience in real estate, maybe then it would make sense. But I don't know why somebody would want to do that. Like I wouldn't want to do it at all. And I also want to make this video, like, if you want to make your own business, but you hear stories about restaurants and things like that, it isn't all like that. Like I'm sure there are a ton of other businesses that have a very low success rate. Like probably YouTube might be a good example. But the thing is with YouTube is there's really nothing to lose other than maybe your time. I mean, unless you're hiring people to make all the videos for you, but you don't have to do that. Like you can get started on YouTube, and even like a high-end, like an expensive way to start a YouTube channel would be spending like $5K. But if you spent $5K on video recording, like your video recording equipment and like a computer to edit the videos, and you don't even really have to spend money on like editing program. DaVinci Resolve is completely free and it's amazing. I started using it. Like you can do a lot of stuff with it. It's a very professional level editing program that is completely free. Now I think even when you pay for the pro level, it's still pretty cheap compared to like Adobe products and stuff like that. But if you spent $5 on a camera and a computer to edit your videos, you could, and like a lighting setup, you could make your videos would be high, as long as you know how to set up the lighting and stuff. Your videos are going to have a quality that looks equal to channels that have like millions of subscribers. Like very, very, very cheap. When you compare that $5, but like if you want to get started on YouTube though, I would urge you to just start off with like your phone, or like this setup, this camera I'm using right now. A lot of people ask me what I'm using. It's an Osmo Pocket, but I'm actually using the old 5-year-old model. I bought it for $120 used on eBay, and then bought the selfie stick and a wide-angle lens and like a holder for it. It was all under $200, and this thing can shoot in 4K, 60 frames per second. In my opinion, it looks pretty awesome. It's not perfect. When it's sunny, like the contrast is too much. It's kind of my only complaint. I think the microphone sounds amazing for what it is. I'm just using the built-in mics on this thing. Under $200. I actually made almost $200 with this YouTube channel like the second month that I had it open. So it paid for that stuff within like the first couple months. I mean, you compare that to a restaurant. Like, are you kidding me? To open up a restaurant, even if you're doing it all with your family, say it's a family-owned one, you have your kids, your wife, and yourself, you're running it, you're not hiring employees, still just like paying the rent for the place to have it in is so much money. It's gonna be like thousands of dollars every month, probably minimum 1,000 or more every month, even if you're in a very cheap part of the United States. If it's a very small restaurant, not in an expensive part of the city, it's still gonna be very, very expensive and very risky. And if you're not hiring employees, obviously it's gonna take a ton of your time. It's gonna take up so much of your time. If you want to start your own business, there's so many easier ways you can start for free. You can just start out doing like some type of freelance thing. I just wanted to talk about that real quick.